Kevin Reynolds took a single step forward, invading the last inch of space between himself and the stoic guardsman. The crowd collectively tensed, unsure if this was finally the moment something would snap. "Let's see if the mannequin moves," he said, his words slurred but loud enough to echo across the courtyard. And then he spat. A sharp gasp rose from the crowd. The spit struck the side of guard Thomas Blackwood's face, just below the brim of his bearskin hat. It slid down his cheek, like an insult made visible. For a split second, everything froze. Even the birds that had circled lazily overhead seemed to vanish from the sky. Blackwood did not move. Not immediately. But deep in his chest, something old stirred. Something that wasn't anger, but something even stronger. Resolve. Reynolds smirked, victorious, his friends hollering behind their phones like frat boys at a tailgate. "That's right," he sneered, turning to the crowd. "He can't do anything. He's just a statue in a funny hat." But then Blackwood took a breath. Not loud, not sharp, just a slow, measured inhale, as though the air itself was part of a ritual. And then, with the careful precision of a soldier trained in both ceremony and combat, Thomas Blackwood took one step forward. The audience fell silent. Even Reynolds staggered slightly, caught off guard by the sudden break in the statue's stillness. Blackwood's hand lifted, not to strike, not to shove, but to remove the ceremonial rifle from his shoulder and place it upright in front of him. His eyes, hidden beneath the brim of his hat, finally met Reynolds's. And then he spoke. "I fought in Helmand Province," Blackwood said, his voice deep and clear, cutting through the courtyard like a sermon. "I dragged brothers through dust and blood, held them while they died in my arms, and buried pieces of myself in the sand so you could drink overpriced scotch and mock men like me." Reynolds blinked, suddenly sober. His smirk faltered. Blackwood didn't blink, didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You think silence is weakness?" he asked. "Let me tell you what silence is." The crowd leaned in. Even the palace security guards hesitated to intervene. "Silence is watching your best friend bleed out and knowing you can't scream for help, because it would give away your position. Silence is standing guard at 3 a.m, while your hands go numb and your thoughts drift home, but your body remains unmoved. Silence is the weight of discipline, the armor of duty, the price of honor." The courtyard was so quiet now you could hear the flag above the palace snapping in the breeze. Blackwood took another step forward. "You want to know what it means to wear this uniform?" he continued. "It means I serve something greater than myself, greater than ego, greater than wealth, greater than cowards who spit and run their mouths." Reynolds opened his mouth as if to respond, but no sound. "You're not the first man to try to break me," Blackwood said. "But you may be the first to do it not with violence, but with arrogance." Blackwood straightened his posture, reshouldering his rifle with grace and dignity. "You think this is a circus, a joke? My silence was never fear, it was restraint. And for people like you, restraint is a language you've never learned to speak." His gaze swept across the crowd, not angry, not superior, but steady. "We do not break character," he said, "because we are character." For a moment, no one moved. Then a single pair of hands began to clap. A woman near the back, cheeks damp with tears, applauded slowly, reverently. The sound was joined by another, and then another. Within seconds, the crowd erupted into genuine thunderous applause, not for a spectacle, but for something real, something noble. Even palace security, often expressionless themselves, allowed flickers of pride to crease their faces. Kevin Reynolds stood frozen, utterly exposed. His friends had lowered their phones. Their smirks had vanished. One of them muttered, "We should go." But Blackwood wasn't done. He turned to the young girl who tugged at her mother's sleeve. Her ice cream had melted down her hand, forgotten. She looked up at him with wide, honest eyes. "For the record," he said, crouching just slightly so he could speak at her level, "we are human." She smiled shyly and nodded. Only then did Blackwood return to his post, turning with the same measured formality he had practiced 1,000 times before. The crowd didn't cheer now. They didn't shout. They simply watched in respectful silence as he resumed his stance, as still and proud as the crown above him. Reynolds and his entourage slinked away, swallowed by the crowd, their presence already fading like a bad dream. Later that evening, footage of the encounter would spread across social media like wildfire, not because of a scandal, not because of a viral prank, but because of a single man's dignity under pressure. The videos didn't show a guard cracking, they showed a soldier standing tall. News outlets picked it up by nightfall. "Royal Guard responds with grace and power to disrespectful tourist," one headline read. Others followed. "The strength of silence, a soldier's lesson at the palace gates. Veterans' words go viral. We do not break character because we are character." But for Thomas Blackwood, none of that mattered. Later that night, in the quiet of his flat, he removed his uniform with the same care he used to put it on. He hung it up neatly, polished his boots, and sat down at his small kitchen table. A cup of tea steamed beside him. He didn't check the internet, didn't watch the news. His phone buzzed with dozens of messages, friends, former comrades, even strangers, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the photograph taped to his refrigerator door. It showed 3 young men in desert fatigues, smiling under a blazing sun. One of them, Sammy, had been the one he dragged to safety that day in Helmand. Another had been lost to a roadside bomb just 2 weeks later. Blackwood raised his tea in a silent toast. "For them," he said softly. And somewhere in Buckingham Palace, another guard prepared for his morning shift, inspired, steeled, ready, because the world had been reminded that behind the stillness of tradition, behind the silence of duty, beat the hearts of warriors. And dignity, after all, is the loudest voice of all.